Hi, my name is Scott Owens, United States Army Corporal, 101st Airborne Division, and this is my story. The Army wasn't my initial choice. I was in Navy Junior ROTC when I was in high school, so naturally I was going to join the Navy, and that didn't work out because I was still under the age of 18. So I had to have parental consent. So with the custody paperwork and stuff, they told my mom I had the right paperwork and it was wrong paperwork, and I ended up sitting up at MEPS all day, and so I just kind of put military on the back burner. And then I moved to Williamsburg with my dad because I was going to go to college, and I was working at SunTrust Bank, and I was on my way to my brother's to go ride jet skis, and I bumped into an Army recruiter, and we started talking. Next thing you know, I was up at MEPS. It was May 31st, 2000 is when I went up there, and then I left for basic training like August 1st, and I got to 30th AG at Fort Benning on August 3rd. And I went through basic training, then I went to Airborne school. I messed up my ankle in Airborne school, so when I went over to RIP, I was put into worldwide deployment and sent to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne Air Division Air Assault. And I stayed there until I got out of the military in 2009. When I got to Campbell, September 11th hadn't happened, and so we were going through all the just standard training and more like small team operations and stuff like that. And then 9/11 happened and all hell broke loose. I was actually sitting in the chow hall. I had just sat down and got my food, and I was watching it on the television, and I was getting ready to take my first bite, and I actually thought they were talking about a movie that was coming out. And the brigade staff duty NCO said, swallow what you have in your mouth, throw your food away, and get to your units. And when I got back over to my unit, because it was right beside the chow hall, one of the platoon sergeants, probably one of the hardest men I've ever known, was crying. And the head shed was at either battalion or brigade, getting the information, and we all got to our unit. They called us to attention, and we did a horseshoe around Sergeant Butler, and he told us that we had been attacked. And it was kind of exciting but aggravating at the same time. We finally get to do our job, the one that we trained for. Unless there's war, infantry really doesn't do a job. But now it was time for us to do our job, and if necessary, give our life to make sure this country stays free. And so for like the next year and a half, we were between training and pulling guard duty. We didn't deploy because we weren't on that rotation. And then in late 2002, they told us that we were going to be deploying to Iraq. And so in February 2003, we load up on a plane and head to Kuwait. And we were at Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait. And that was interesting. The sandstorms, the Scud alarms, and then people stealing hand grenades and throwing it in a command tent. That was my brigade that got hit by that guy, Sergeant Akbar, I believe his name was. And then the day finally came. I remember I was walking past the MWR tent, and they had one of them big flat screen TVs, and we saw President Bush on there basically giving Saddam and his sons an ultimatum: either get out or you're gonna die. And so we knew it was about time. And then we moved to, I think it was Camp Udari, which is another location in Kuwait, and boarded the helicopters, and we flew into Najaf, Iraq. And we landed on, they called it at the time, it's probably something different now, the new airfield and we seized that airfield without a shot fired. And a couple of days later, we got a follow-on mission to clear this corn mill factory, and then there was a compound behind it that civilians had told intel that was housing the Fedayeen. So we leave out, just before dawn and link up with the scouts. Scouts point us in a direction. At this time, I was the RTO, so I was the communication between my platoon commander and our company commander, or battalion, depending on, whatever the mission required. And so we go through and we clear this corn mill factory, and then there's this opening in the wood line, and we go through the wood line and we start moving towards the compound, and all of a sudden we start taking fire from one of the guard towers. So we do a movement to contact up towards the wall, and then we're at our LOA. I can't remember what it stands for. Basically, it's your last cover and concealed position before you attack the enemy. And we decided to go up to this wall that was surrounding the compound because we noticed that it had some holes in it. So the forward operators gives me the Viper system, and I take it with me, and me, the PL, and first squad go up against this wall, and they're shooting at him through these little peepholes, and I take the Viper binoculars and laze him and get a grid coordinate, and I call it back to the fisters, and they're like, all right, we're going to do a call for fire, break contact. First squad breaks contact, and we're laying down cover fire to keep the bad guy's head down so they could get back, and then they would provide cover fire for us. Well, they got in position, and me and the LT got ready to pull back with the rest of the platoon, and we get pinned down by a sniper from another location within the compound. So we're down in this gully, and we start low crawling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I look at the LT and I was like, hey, what are we supposed to do? Rounds are still going overhead. And he goes, I don't know. That's not what you want to hear from your PL, but I was like, okay. So I get on the mic, and I'm like, Bulldog 6 is 16 Romeo. And he, his RTO calls me back, and I'm like, hey, we're pinned down by sniper fire. And the company commander gets on the radio and was like, hey, where are you at? And I was like, you see that big wall in front of you? He said, yeah. I said, well, there's a gully that we're pinned down in. He's like, well, I need to know your exact location. So the platoon commander takes his Kevlar off and pulls out this piece of VI-17 panel. It's like this neon orange panel that they usually use in Mark LZs for helicopters. We had cut it into strips to be able to mark rooms when we were clearing buildings. So he tied it to the end of my long whip antenna, and we extended my long whip and we waved it back and forth. And company commander calls me. He's like, hey, we see you. You need to get out of there. We did a call for fire, and it's coming. It's like, Roger. So we keep moving back and forth, and this time we go a little bit further. And the rounds finally stop. So the LT and I look at each other, and we get up to come up over this berm, and I get a call over the radio, get the bleep down, incoming. And then all of a sudden you hear this loud whistle, and then boom, everything goes black. And I'm not sure how long I was on the ground, but when I finally came to, there were Akaya warriors and Apache helicopters doing gun runs on the compound, and I saw the LT laying right there beside me. I started beating him in the arm, and finally he comes to, and I was like, hey sir, are you okay? Are you bleeding? And he says, no, I don't think so. And so I kind of check him a little bit, and the two of us get up, and we start running just towards the back of the field. We couldn't, we still had Tweety birds flying around our head, but we ended up meeting the aid and litter team who was coming to pick us up, and they guided us to where the rest of the platoon was. And that was probably the roughest moment during my time in Iraq. I don't remember a whole lot about it. There's a couple operations I do remember. Operation Tapeworm, where we got Uday and Qusay Hussein. My unit was involved with that, and that was interesting. We messed that house up pretty bad, and sent those bastards right where they belong. And then it went to a less of a combat operations to more of a how can we help you now that we blew up your country type operations. And we went into a lot of the little small villages and found that they didn't, their power was shady, and they didn't have good clean water and this, that, and the other. And we helped rebuild schools, helped reestablish schools, police, fire stations. John Petraeus was the division commander at the time, and they made Mosul was like a model city of how they designed the Iraqi government while we were there. So, a lot of positive things came out of being there. And then, of course, that's when the insurgents started coming in, and we had to deal with IEDs, but they weren't as sophisticated then. They would just stick them in a pile of trash, and you go buy it, and boom. And then, they got smarter and started digging holes and burying them in the ground. And so we come home in February of 2004, and then I re-enlisted in 2004 and changed units, and I went to the 4th Brigade Combat Team, which became the 506 Kirky. And then in 2006, after I had foot surgery, I deployed to join the rest of my unit in Ramadi, Iraq. And Ramadi, Iraq was a pretty rough place. When we kicked all the insurgents out of Fallujah and Tikrit, they all went to Ramadi. And when I got there, that place was so bad the media wouldn't even go there. It was pretty interesting because, every day we were getting mortared. Snipers were up in the minarets taking pop shots at us. It was pretty bad. And, the rules of engagement around most of Iraq was, you had to call up at least 3 levels before you could squeeze the trigger. Our rules of engagement were if they look suspicious, shoot them. It was that bad there. And I lost a lot of friends during my second deployment. And so I was really anxious to get there and be there with my guys. And then probably the worst experience I had there was November 2nd, 2006. It was pretty much our last period in Ramadi, and we were at OP Hotel, which was, I guess it used to be a hotel, and after insurgents drove a dump truck V-bed into it, it was basically a building that was held together by sandbags and duct tape. And from what I understand, they've torn that down because they deemed it a safety hazard. But I was on guard duty, and my Iraqi counterpart, we were talking, and all of a sudden these bongo trucks started driving up and down the street. And the ICDC, which was the predecessor to the Iraqi army, looks at me and goes, Mr. No good, no good. So I called up to the OP Hotel TOC and was like, hey, you need to come down here with the interpreter. This guy is saying that these bongo trucks are saying, no good. So they come down, and the bongo trucks had loudspeakers on them, and they were announcing, for the people to stay inside that there was going to be an attack on the Americans. And so probably 30, 45 minutes go by, and the prayer starts, and the Iraqi army guy was like, this isn't good. And right after the prayers finished, all hell breaks loose, and that was a firefight that lasted about a good 3 or 4 hours. And that was my last experience in Iraq. And as things begin to settle down, our company commander comes rolling in on some Airborne tanks and fires into the city. And he was like, "You boys ready to go home?" And we're like, "Hell yes." And so we grabbed our stuff and left. And the unit that was replacing us, basically took over from there. And we went to, I don't remember what it was called, but it was Marine Corps airfield. I think they called it QS, I don't remember. But we were there for about 2 weeks, and while I was there, I got to see Shinedown in concert, which was pretty cool. And then we came home, and I got home, I think it was like November 21st, something like that. It was like right at Thanksgiving. And then I think it was December 18th, we found out my wife was pregnant, which is a miracle in and of itself, because the doctors told my wife that she'd never get pregnant because she had a brain tumor in 2000. And so like with all her surgeries and stuff, I guess they figured, she wouldn't be able to get pregnant. So my oldest daughter was born in August of 2007. And then my middle daughter was born in October of 2009, right after we got here. I got out of the military in June of 2009. We moved to Florida because as I was looking at places I wanted to live, I wanted to be somewhere warm where it didn't snow. Bay Pines, or it's called C.W. Bill Young VA Medical Center is what it's called now, had some really good ratings. And so we get to Largo, and I start trying to find a job, start trying to work my way into the VA, and that's a fight in and of itself. I was going nowhere fast. I was getting frustrated because I was sending out thousands and thousands of resumes, and I had a letter of recommendation from the Rear Detachment Division Commander. I had letters of recommendation that my battalion commander had written me from downrange and sent to me. So I had letters of recommendation just to be able to try to find something to support my family. I even took a step because I know if you have a job, you can find a job. So I tried to apply at McDonald's, and I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and I called them up. I was like, "Hey, I put an application, are you guys hiring or calling out for interviews?" And they're like, "Yeah, we saw your application, you're just overqualified." I'm like, "Okay, it's McDonald's. How am I overqualified to work there?" Just didn't make any sense to me. And that was pretty much the last straw. And just one day I had enough, and I loaded my pistol, and I started playing Xbox, something that I just didn't really do. And I had gone through the easy level, the intermediate level, and then I was on like the highest level of Halo. My wife came in and she was like, "You gonna come out of the room?" And I was like, "No." And she noticed a pistol beside me, and she's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I've had enough." And she kind of flipped out, and she called for help. And they sent the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Well, they come bumbling to the door, and she's like, you're either going to go in there and help him, or you're going to get back in your car and leave. And there was this one deputy, Deputy Decker, was like, "All right, boys, y'all stay here, hold my beer." He comes in, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and I look over at his hand, and he's got a big old collegiate style ring with Eagle Globe and Anchor. It says United States Marine Corps around it. He says, "I've been there, done that, let's talk about it." So I just broke down. And he took me, got me to the VA eventually. And that's when I started getting help. And then through everything started up at the VA, I got introduced to this organization called the Abilities Foundation, which helps people with disabilities find work. And through them, I started speaking out about the struggle that disabled veterans are having finding employment, And I did that for several years. I got involved with the Ability One program, and I've been to DC, I've been all over the United States talking to like government contractors and stuff about the importance of hiring veterans. And to fast forward a little bit, in 2015, we got our house in Winter Haven through an organization called Building Homes for Heroes. And we've been there since. In 2019, I started looking for ways that, you know, I could try to improve some of my traumatic brain injuries and dealing with PTSD and stuff like that. And, you know, I've been reading articles and stuff about, you know, music helping with both. And going through choir and stuff in high school, I knew that, you know, music could help. I just didn't know how it was applied in this context. And so I started filling out some of the different programs and stuff. I got introduced to this organization called Creative Vets, and they took me to Nashville, and I wrote my very first song called Home for a Hero. And when I got home, I started looking at, you know, how do I record this myself? And so I reached out to a buddy of mine. He told me how much it would cost to get into a studio to record. I was like, man, that's too much. And so I was looking on Facebook, and I came across this school called the Florida Institute of Recording, Sound, and Technology. And so I filled out a little info form, and they called me up. They were like, hey, you want to come for a tour? And so we went for a tour. And you know, I played Home for a Hero because we had a, you know, iPhone recording that we had made from the writing room at the Grand Ole Opry, and I played it for him. And then I played Tree of Liberty, one of the songs I wrote with the Country Music Hall of Fame music education program. And they were like, hey, you know, we would really like you to be a student here. And so, you know, I fill out the student application, everything. We, you know, got everything ready for my GI Bill and all that good stuff. And before we even made it past the gas station, they called me and they're like, hey, we made our decision, decided we wanted to accept you. So I went to First and got my diploma in recording arts and show production. And during my time at First, found a program called Vet Voices. And during that time, I wrote a song called Bloodstained Boots. I was supposed to premiere it at the very first show, and because of COVID, they kind of threw a wrench into the plans. And so I've been working on it and working on improving my music skills and stuff like that. And through one of the many different activity programs through like Wounded Warrior Project, something like that, we got introduced to the Camaraderie Foundation, and I really like them because, you know, they have events for families, and you're around with other families. I deal with agoraphobia, so like I really don't like being around a whole lot of people, but being around other veterans that are kind of dealing with the same thing, you know, it gives my children a chance to socialize with other veteran children. And because of the Camaraderie Foundation, I got recommended to sit on the board of directors for the Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida, and I now serve as the secretary of the board for that. So, you know, I'm trying to give back to the community as much as I can. This is Bloodstained Boots. I wrote this song just to give you a little bit of a backstory. When I got to Iraq in 2006, I got back to my unit, and I ended up staying back on this mission to guard the chicken coop because I hadn't really gotten settled in. And they go out on a mission into the Mulab, which was like the Wild Wild West. And they had this guy with them. It was his last mission in Iraq. As soon as they got back, he was getting on a bird and going home. And they told him not to go out on the road because he could get hit by sniper fire. And he didn't listen. And he ended up going out on the road and got hit in the neck. And our medic did everything he could to save this guy's life. And when they got back, his boots were covered with blood. And so they got him a new pair of boots, and they're like, "Hey doc, you want to throw those away?" And they gave him a bag, and he was like, "No, I'm gonna put them in a bag and stick them in my duffel because I want to keep these to remind me where I came from." It was kind of the inspiration for this song, and basically it talks about coming to terms with having PTSD. Took an oath to defend this land. On this hill I proudly stand. Give my life for liberty. That's why I joined the infantry. Days of battles are far behind, though the thoughts won't leave my mind. Look in the mirror and see the truth. Soldier I was, wearing bloodstained boots. Send me to a foreign land. Freedom's torch in my hand. Sounds of battle was all around. Day I thought I was heaven bound. Days of battles are far behind, though the thoughts won't leave my mind. Look in the mirror and see the truth. Soldier I was, wearing bloodstained boots. Here I am trying to find myself, placing memories upon a shelf, hanging medals from the wall, reminders why I'll never fall. Days of battles are far behind, though the thoughts won't leave my mind. Look in the mirror and see the truth. Soldier I was, wearing bloodstained boots. Days of battles are far behind, though the thoughts won't leave my mind. Look in the mirror and see the truth. Soldier I was, wearing bloodstained boots. Soldier I was, wearing bloodstained boots.